How lovely to see you all here today. What a fine-looking bunch of people we have in the audience. So what I'm going to do first, just to start, if that's all right, I've been briefed by my social media department. I'm going to take, I think, what everyone calls a selfie. Is that all right? That's assuming my arms are long enough. So what I do need, though, is just everybody to give me a big wave and a cheer. So after three, 1, 2, 3. Oh dear. You do that once more, just once more. 3, 2, 1. Yay! Good. Right. Got that out of the way. There we go. That'll keep them happy. Thank you very much for that, for indulging me, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolute pleasure it is to welcome you here today. And I've just been in here and just sort of feeling the buzz that there's been outside while you've all been assembling. And it's fantastic to be introducing you to the 2018 Service Dealer Conference in what is the magazine's 30th year. Exactly 30 years ago, give or take a couple of months, Chris Biddle started what has become the voice of the industry. And it's true that much has challenged the industry over that time, and our 30th year has been, without doubt, one of the tougher ones. I don't have to tell you that. With virtually no rain when it mattered, and obviously things like very testing exchange rates. But once again, you know, we have a room full of very talented dealers here, and also some very innovative manufacturers and service providers. We're an industry that is driven by talent, and we're delighted that you have chosen to join us here today. So a very warm welcome to old friends, and also to some new ones. So we're here today to celebrate the past, but more importantly, to look ahead to what the next 30 years might throw at us, and how we're going to not just cope, but thrive in the world of ground care and agriculture. As we go through the day, you're going to hear from a number of experts relating to the future of our industry. And if you don't get a chance to raise specific questions throughout the day, please bear in mind that you can ask some of the experts during question time, which follows the panel debate. So if you would just simply fill in a form, which you should find on your table, and hand it to a member of TAP staff, it will be included in the last session. Or if we do run short on time, we do run questions and answers in the post-event edition of Service Dealer. May I also say, for the tweeters amongst you, please do include hashtag #ServiceDealer18 and check out @ServiceDealer to follow our conversation. I would just also like for this initial session to welcome some of those of you watching this welcome address via our live stream on Twitter. Please do keep an eye on today's proceedings and again this evening, when we will be posting from the awards ceremony live. Now, it's very important that Service Dealer magazine and the conference is the strongest it can possibly be and reaches nearly all, if not all, of UK dealerships. And as such, the magazine and weekly update is distributed free of charge to dealers and not subscription-based. We're very proud of that. But with this in mind, I would like to say a very special thank you to our commercial partners for supporting us throughout this year. Today, though, is unashamedly about you, the dealers. But before we start, I want to briefly focus on today's sponsors who've invested in supporting the dealer community. They vary in size and span manufacturing, services, logistics, but they all offer real innovation in their own areas of expertise. And this is innovation that would stand up in any commercial sector. But more importantly, today's conference is about insight and knowledge sharing for the good of the industry, and these companies have all chosen to support that and align themselves with these principles. Cramp were here supporting us last year, and today they are our principal sponsors once again. Stihl are again a platinum sponsor, and returning this year are Husqvarna, Catalyst and Kubota as gold sponsors. I'm delighted that Honda and Etizia are also joining us as gold sponsors today. And today's networking sponsors are again Ibcos, TAP and Bagma. Thank you also, if I may say, to Honda for bringing along their Mean Mower, which will soon be attempting the world speed record with the fearless Jess Hawkins at the wheel. The Mean Mower will be here all day, as will Jess and James, so please take a look if you haven't already. It's an amazing piece of kit. Next to the Mean Mower, we're also showcasing the redesigned Garden Trader website, so please do also take a look at that while you're here. All sponsors are displaying in the refreshment area, and please do take the time to talk to them. They have invested in you and in today. To all your sponsors, thank you very much for investing in this unique independent event just for our dealers and making it all possible. To frame the day, we have a reflective and you might even say sedate start. I will be sitting down with Chris very shortly to briefly comment on the last 30 years and what have been the highs and the low points. Then afterwards, we have a really fascinating speaker, the popular futurist Ed Gillespie, who will be pressing that fast forward button and giving us his vision of what lies ahead, especially relating to our industry. I'm very excited to hear that. Following on from Ed, and a short coffee break, will be our 2 breakout sessions. Sarah Hay from dealer specialist training company Bob Clements has flown in all the way from the US to be with us today and offer us some amazing insight from one of the largest ground care and ag markets that in the world. Sarah will be talking about succession, which we all know is a very hot topic in the UK dealer network. Sarah, there you are. Thank you so much for travelling such a distance to be with us today. It's much appreciated. The other workshop will be tackling urbanisation and what it could mean for us. And who better to run that than Ed Gillespie, who incidentally is a director in an underground urban farm project in London. Right, and all that before lunch, wow. Then we thought it would be useful to hear from 2 successful customers, a farmer and a ground care buyer. What exactly are they looking for from a dealer and what makes them decide? Many of you might have heard of Angus Lindsay, who is Head of Assets and Fleet Management at ID Verdi. Our second customer is James Price, who is an arable farmer on the edge of the Cotswolds, not far from here. And he's already building a reputation for innovation in precision farming technology and also soil health, which is very important at the moment. Both James and Angus will be talking to us about their positives and their pain points and how we dealers can help them as the customer. Some very quick housekeeping for today, if I may. All information is in your delegates pack on your tables, plus an evaluation form, and we really ask you to fill this in by the end of today, and we found these so helpful after last year. You know, it helps us to continue to improve because the content of this conference is for you, the dealers. May I ask you to switch off or mute your mobile phones for the conference, and please try to be back promptly for the start of each session. Once again, for those of you who do like to tweet, please do include hashtag ServiceDealer18 and check out @ServiceDealer to follow our conversation. And we'll also be conducting some live broadcasts throughout the day. Right, I realised something at this moment in time. I should have been pressing a clicker, ladies and gentlemen. So my slides have probably got out of date. So I don't know if the team could get through to the logo theme slide. That'll be fantastic on page 6. Thank you. Apologies about that. So, as I mentioned, we are in our 30th year, and it's only right that we celebrate that fact here today. We thought it would also be very interesting to fast forward 30 years to 2048 and ask that important question, how the hell are we going to get there? This is why we've themed this year's conference, Insights for Our Industry, helping you prosper over the next 30 years. Right, let's kick off. About 5 years ago, my path crossed with that of a Mr. Chris Biddle. And fate is a funny thing, but I quickly went from knowing very little about the industry to being lucky enough to acquire a well-respected title in such a friendly and, yes, progressive industry. So before we race ahead, we're going to take just 15 minutes or so to start today in a steady and grounded fashion, I think, Mr. Biddle, and take a look back at the last 30 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you give a very warm welcome, Chris, who is going to join me on stage now, Chris Biddle.
Duncan, thank you.
Right, should we?
What's a selfie?
A selfie. Well, it's, I'll explain to you a bit later. But right, please do have a seat.
Excuse me, waddling like a duck. I've got a mechanical knee that needs replacing. Can't get the engineers these days.
Okay. Let's just see if that works. Oh, we'll go to this. Great. 30 years, Chris. That's really quite a milestone. Has it gone quickly?
Yes. Next question.
Probably a little bit too quickly, but I hope you'll forgive me. But I'm going to have to take the audience back. I wanted to set the scene here today, but also I don't think people probably. I was quite interested in your past and really the experience, the level of experience that Chris has within the industry. So I just wanted to sort of frame that particular piece of today, because you actually started back in take everyone back to 1961, I believe it was, when you were working with Fords and Tractors. Now, there's a very sprightly picture of you there, and I actually have a piece of video which I just want to show everyone. This is from 1962.
1962. I was working for Ford Tractors as a demonstrator, and I was given a truck with 3 others and told to drive to Dover and beetle off down to Spain. Trouble is, I was only 20, I wasn't old enough to drive the truck in the UK, so I had to get somebody to drive it to Dover for me, and then they said, bye-bye, off you go.
Brilliant, and the perfect cue for perhaps we could run VT, as I think they say.
Many Spanish were killed in the making that film because the reversible plough had a mind of its own and kept on flipping over when you didn't want it to. And as you can see, we didn't actually include also the film of the driverless tractor pulling dead bulls out of bull rings. A bit too sensitive these days, exactly. Okay. I think when I first saw that, I thought it was a fascinating clip. It's obviously quite a while ago. Lovely cinematography, I have to say, Chris. 8 minutes.
But so you're there from 61 to 63 with Fords Tractors, and then Chris jumped the fence and went dealer side, where he was with Abro & Co. for, I think, about 23 years in total.
Yeah, about right, yeah.
And Abro were very much an ag and a ground care dealership, and Chris was there, I think, until you had about four branches, was
yeah,
it? By the
in the end, yeah.
Which Chris was running as MD. And then I think the company was bought out, which was when you we'd probably set more down the path of your the publishing path, if I can call it that. And we have, in fact, it's probably easier, Chris. Would you mind just taking us through? In 1988, obviously, you started Garden Machinery Retailer. There you go, the green one on the right. And we've got a few slides just to frame them, if that's okay.
This was actually a dealer trip when I was a dealer. Laker Airline, going on an exotic dealer trip, home and light I think it was, to Lorette de Mar. And I'm looking like Columbo at the back, and some people might recognise Ian Gracewood, who I had the pleasure of meeting again the other day. Anyway, that's that. Yes, for a couple of years I ran a guest house up with Trish. I've always wanted I've always wanted to be a writer, always wanted to be a journalist. And so one day I popped into our local printer with a bunch of papers. I had been quite involved with Bagman at the time, and said, look, can you turn this into a magazine? And we came up with Garden Machinery Retailer. Keith, don't worry, it's quite a long notice period that we got. That's 1998, Bagman Acts Director General. After about 3 years, we decided that actually the dealers were branching out, and so we actually changed it to Lawn and Garden Equipment, which was a slightly broader title. And in 1998, 10 years later after the launch, we launched Turf Professional. In 2001, we were getting quite busy then, so I actually wanted somebody to join me and just take some of the load off. So I put an advert in the paper, and this young lad came through the door, ideally qualified with a degree in American Film Studies, and Steve Gibbs joined us in 2001. And that's him cuddling up to Jim.
Charlie. He's on the left, is he?
Yeah, he is the one.
Okay.
A few years later after that, we decided to actually get into the agricultural machinery market and launched a magazine called Torque, which is similar to Garden Machinery. But after publishing it side by side with Lawn and Garden Equipment, we suddenly realised that not only were a lot of dealers in both camps, they had ag and garden machinery or turf care departments, but actually the content was all pretty well the same in terms of employing people and profitability and so on. So we decided to put it together into Service Dealer, and which is where it is now. So a couple of years ago I hooked up with Duncan, and we published the magazine jointly for a couple of years until, rather like, a lot of you won't recognise his name, Victor Khayyam, he so liked the business that he bought it.
Remington Fuzzaway.
Yeah, there you go.
I remember him. Brilliant. Great. Chris, thank you for taking us through that. I've just got a few further questions, if that's all right. May I relieve you of the clicker? Is that okay? Yeah. There's a word that's readily bandied around these days, the word disruptors, and we see disruptors pretty much anywhere we go these days, from walking outside of the house right up to the highest level of politics. Obviously, that's incredibly topical at the moment. So, in regards to disruptors, what do you think, looking back over the last 30 years, what's been the disruptive element in the industry?
Well, I reckon there's four areas. The first one is obvious. It's the weather. Can't do anything about it. It's the weather. We published just after the big wind blow in 1987, when there was more chainsaws sold in a week than I think has been sold since. And those that are involved in that will remember that hectic time. Since then, the weather's gone up and down. We've had hosepipe bans. I was actually a dealer in 1976 when we had that incredibly hot summer, and we sat in the dealership for 2 months and didn't see anybody walk through the door. It would, what else could we sell? We were locked in the lawnmowers. And then since then, we had the floods in...
Well, it's exactly. Sorry, we just have a slide up. I know that's very topical. I think the weather, talking about that this year. What about the retailers, Chris?
Well, I reckon there's two ages that I've seen during the last 30 years. There's the age of the shed and the age of the internet. And B&Q had only, as a big shed, had only launched in the 70s. And by the time we launched, it was really in full stride. And we're starting to dominate the market. I don't know whether many of you remember, but a seminal moment where it came in, I can't remember exactly when it was, 1990, when B&Q suddenly marketed a petrol walk-behind mower at under £100. And that particular moment, I think, it dropped the perceived value of a petrol walk-behind from about £200 to under £100. I mean, the machine was, can I say crap? The machine was a side discharge steel deck imported from the States, and was rubbish, frankly. But it had a similar effect on customers. And,
yeah, no, I bet. So obviously that's the retailers. What about the technology?
Well, I was going to say, sort of following on from the retail side, obviously since then, because the sheds had the big advertising budgets, open 7 days a week, and big car parks and so on, dealers were very unable to compete, frankly. And so gradually over these last 30 years, as the internet came on stream, and remember the internet was only in its infancy, if not even there 30 years ago, the dealers were all of a sudden able to get their name out there in a way they just simply couldn't afford to in the past.
Yeah.
As far as technology is concerned, well, I guess, this last couple of years, you see there in 1962 we had a driverless tractor. Okay, it was radio controlled, but it was driverless. Since then, I think I saw my first robot mower in Holland. It was a solar mower, actually, around about 1994, and I went to Holland I went to Israel with Tim Mitchell, some of you might remember him, to look at the first Robomo in 1998, which had been designed by a guy called Udi Pellis, who was a technical guy in Israel. So that on that side, and then cordless. I mean, cordless, I remember having a conversation with Richard Sanderson of Black & Decker, who were heavily into power tools, and they were getting into the garden machinery market. And he said to me, I'll tell you what, this is, I think, 1990, cordless will have 30% of the market in 10 years. Well, we're slightly slower in adopting it than that, aren't we? But now, it's suddenly come in a rush. So, and going back to the ag side, actually, if you could just sit through these slides. Yeah, just B&Q, we're going to set up a service network at some time. And anyway.
Chris, could I just sort of move this on? I'm just conscious of time. I'm really sorry. It's fascinating because I do want to talk about, talking about these disruptors. I mean, the economy. Everybody mentions the economy. Is it all about the economy?
No, it's not. No, it's not. The economy has very little effect on sales, frankly. I think the phrase has got to be, it's the weather stupid rather than it's the economy stupid.
Yeah. So dealers have had, certainly this year, have had a lot to contend with you guys. You've met a lot of dealers over the last 30 years, Chris. And they've, their mettle has been well and truly tested this year. What makes a good dealer?
Money. I think they need to be pragmatists. They probably need a sense of humour. I think the big advantage with a dealer is their reactiveness. They can react very quickly, much quicker than a lot of the bigger companies can. And if the weather suddenly turns either one way or the other, they can quickly react. And I think that's the strength of a dealer.
Yeah.
I also, lastly, I think it's the customer service. They need to be customer friendly. And I think this personal touch, we're seeing what's happening in the high street at the moment. And all the big stores are struggling, and the high street is struggling. Thank goodness, firstly, not many dealers are in the high street. And thank goodness also Black Friday appears in November, not in April.
Yeah, that would certainly be interesting. 30 years is a very long time, and is the industry? How does the industry compare? 30, I know it's very different, bit of an unfair question, but is it in better shape now than it was 30 years ago?
I think in some ways it is, actually. I think the opportunities are still there. It's a fast-moving. I'd be interested to hear what Sarah says later on. But I just get the impression that in terms of succession and that there are a lot more dealer sons and daughters coming into the business now, where maybe 10, 15 years ago they weren't attracted to it. But because of all the technology that is around the business and the social media aspects, then I think they are attracted to it, and I think that's a very encouraging sign. So stick on in there. I think it's still going to be okay.
So an exciting time to be in the industry?
I would guess so.
Yeah. Good. Well,
All
it's. I think it'd be quite nice to end on that positive note. I think.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty going on to challenge us. So, Chris, thank you very much for joining me up here on stage. And I know that although the past is very, very important, I know you of all people will want us now to start looking ahead to the future.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me, everyone.
Can I say one last thing? When it's your baby, your business that you started from scratch, and you went through Trish. When I started it, she went back to her nursing, and we got through it. When you pass on a business, what you want is for its DNA to be respected and continued. And you also want that somebody to grow your business as well. In both respects, TAP, Duncan, Emma and the team have been brilliant, so I'd like to pay tribute to them. Thank you very much indeed.
It's our pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much.